In November of 2015, I was drowning in what I now know as meat madness. My body, my mind, my spirit were all being ravaged and deteriorated and destroyed by the food that I was willingly putting into my body. The food that you would have had to cut off my hands in order to stop me from putting it into my mouth. I was suffering from meat madness. This meat madness had manifested itself in several ways in my health. When I was in my early 20s, I was diagnosed with type 2 diabetes. Later in my 20s, I had a few battles with pancreatitis. And through my 30s, I continued to have battles with my weight, with my health, until in my 40s, it all kind of came together and culminated in a heart attack in August of 2014. And you would think that having a heart attack would have been all that was needed to break that chain of terrible food addiction, the meat madness, but it was not. It actually took an incident that happened in my personal life that really didn't have anything to do with my physical health, but more with my mental health. You see, food doesn't just interrupt the systems inside of your body physically, but it also affects your mental state of mind, it affects your spiritual being. And meat madness had me on the verge of actual madness. I was angry, I was congested in the head. I just had thoughts that seemed like they never cleared out, that they were always there. My mind was always working on how to get these things out of my head. And then I was online. I had actually made a conscious decision that I was going to deprogram myself and then reprogram myself with good information. I'm trying not to get too much off subject here, but I understand that society has programmed us to think in a certain way. And I knew that I needed to think differently before I realized that I needed to eat differently. So I went to YouTube, the digital encyclopedia of the millennium, and I began to look for information that would edify me spiritually, that would help me develop mentally, and would just make my life better all around. And lo and behold, the door was opened and a light shone through. And on the other side of the door, there stood Dr. Sebi. I had seen bits and pieces of Dr. Sebi's lectures over the years, but I had never put any time into actually listening to what he had to say. I think that it was the fact that in every person's life, you must come to a place where things begin to change for you. And when I heard Dr. Sebi this time, it was as though his message was just for me. He talked about his naked mama in Africa and how she didn't have any disease and how she didn't have any grocery stores or alcohol or doctors or medications and no sin. That her health and her well-being came from the things that God had put around her to edify and nourish her. And that message hit home with me. And I knew that what I was listening to was more than words. They were a poem for my soul that moved me to another place. I became what I call now a Sabianite. And I followed the vegan alkaline diet. And after being on this diet for now a little under 120 days, I believe that the health benefits I have gained from this lifestyle change will allow me to move into the future with more certainty, with less thoughts about dying from health-related illnesses. So, what have been the changes that I've seen? I can tell you this first and foremost, that my mind gained a peace and a tranquility that I did not have before. This was completely new for me, having this calm in my head. Not only did my mind find a new calm, but also I noticed that my energy level, not just my energy level in the morning or my energy level in the evening or my energy level in the afternoon, but my energy level all day long was at a consistent level. It stayed up and didn't have the valleys and the peaks. My energy was like the sun. It radiated outward and was constant. What I noticed is that meals, alkaline, vegan meals, made me feel alive and energized after I ate. I no longer had the mealtime nappies where you feel as though you're going to pass out after you eat. I tell my wife Nat that I know now that I was overdosing on the food and that I was actually passing out and not falling to sleep. It was like having too much alcohol and your body can't handle it. All of the things that I was putting into my body for nourishment were doing just the opposite. They were zapping my energy away from me. They were making me tired and lethargic. My thought process was stuck in a fog. And that was just normal for me for for 46 years solid. That was my normal life. What else has changed? I have noticed that my bowel movements are more regulated and more frequent. Before November, I would maybe have one bowel movement a day, maybe one bowel movement every other day. Now I have 2 bowel movements in the morning, 2 bowel movements in the afternoon, and at least 2 bowel movements in the evening. I had no idea that the body was supposed to work in this way. I thought that my bowel movements I was having were absolutely natural and normal. And now I find myself asking, where was all of that poop that was staying in my system from all of that food? And now I'm asking myself if, another fact that I forgot to mention, that from November of 2015 until now, which is March of 2016, I have lost 35 pounds through that journey of cutting out meat, all forms of processed sugar, all sodas and sugar beverages. I don't eat anything that is not alkaline vegan. And it has been, honestly, the best change I have made in my entire life. Also, in November, I stopped taking all of my medications. I was on a pill for my type 2 diabetes and also on insulin injections 3 times a day with each meal. I was on blood pressure medication, also on medication for my cholesterol, and medication for my hypertension. All of those medications have been discontinued since November. My blood sugars have been absolutely phenomenal. My blood pressure has run too low on some days instead of too high. One of my biggest problems that I have had for the last 3 years is my problem with pain, mostly pain from arthritis. I have arthritis in my hands, I have arthritis in my knees, and I have arthritis in my spine. And my hand and my knee were the 2 things that would have me praying on a daily basis for one thing, and that is just to be pain-free. I didn't pray for diabetes to go away. I didn't pray for my heart disease to go away. I didn't pray for my high blood pressure to go away, because these things I could not feel. They were silently killing me from the inside out. But my arthritis was something that I could feel every single day. The pain would absolutely have my mood in a dark and dreary place. I walked around like Quasimodo, dragging my leg behind me from September until May every year for the last 3 years. This year, my pain started in September, just as it always does with the end of summer. But this year, in November, I made a change. And within 1 week of being on Sebi's diet, Dr. Sebi's diet, my arthritis pain started to subside until the strongest arthritis pain I have had all winter so far would have to be maybe a 1 or a 1.5, and it has been in this finger right here. That's it. That, for me, was the answer to every prayer that I could ever send up to the Creator. That was the only thing I wanted God to give me, a pain-free body. And through Dr. Sebi, I was allowed to find that path that I needed so badly. So why? I wanted to be pain-free. I wanted to be healthy. I wanted to live a long and fruitful life so that my children and my grandchildren and my future great-grandchildren will have the opportunity to know me, and I will have the opportunity to know them. Unlike my youngest children who didn't have the opportunity to meet their grandparents, because on my mother's side of the family, I had 3 generations. My mother's mother, no, I am the 3rd generation. It was my mother's mother who died from diabetes-related illnesses. My mother, who suffered from diabetes-related illnesses all of her life. And then me, who was succumbing to believing that diabetes was some type of genetic curse that had been laid upon me, when everything I was suffering from was being brought to me by the way I had been taught to eat and by the way I was eating. That was my motivation on my mother's side. On my father's side, his mother died from cancer-related illnesses. My father died from cancer-related illnesses. And I did not want to die from any cancer-related illnesses. Another thing about the diabetes is that I saw my mother and my uncles and my aunts all lose limbs to the ravages of diabetes. And I made a promise to myself when I was very young that I would not lose any of my appendages because of a disease. So I guess that was a lot of my motivation. Another thing that my diabetes was wreaking havoc on was my vision. I would eat a meal, and if my vision was straight and focused before the meal, it was fractured and out of focus by the time I ate, and my blood sugar had risen to the point of way out of control. Now I can say that my vision is pretty much at a level keel all day long. There are no huge spikes. There are no huge falls. I don't have blurry vision for 30 minutes after I eat. I don't have to take a shot to get my vision to come back into focus. If I could just let one person know, just one, that you can change what you're going through. You, that your health is in your own hands. Hippocrates learned from the Egyptians his philosophy on food. And he said, let food be your medicine, and let medicine be your food. I have learned that, and food is now my medicine, and my medicine now comes from my food. I would like to thank you for watching this video, and I would like to thank you for allowing me to share my personal testimony with you. And I hope that it will help you.